Thanks, Sam, for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here. Is there a slide clicker just for the slide presentation? Just wanted to check on that. Thanks.
Just as that's arriving, I just wanted to say, this is an announcement from the interpreters, so there are interpreters and translators who are in real time translating what you're saying. So please, if you could speak slowly, and if you have a speech, if you could just send it to them, so give it to us so we can give it to them, so that they can translate easier, so they can basically capture the content of your work. So just an announcement for the speakers.
Thank you, Sam. And a very good morning to everyone here. Today I just want to introduce you to this silhouette of a man on the slides. This silhouette's name is Federico, and Federico has an interesting story. Federico is just graduated from high school. He is 18 years young, and he's just enrolled into university. So Federico is just like any other student who's walking onto university. He has varied interests. Let's say, he likes volleyball, rap music, and has a penchant for red wine. But apart from that, and all these varied interests, he has no prior experience or engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals. He has heard about the SDGs vaguely. He knows they exist. He knows they're aligned with the UN, but he doesn't really know what they are, and he hasn't really experienced any sort of engagement with them at all. Why is Federico's story important? Federico's story is important because around the world, many students are like Federico. According to UNESCO, in 2014, 207 million students were enrolled in higher education in that year alone. That is a significant amount of people studying in higher education institutions, and many of them are just like Federico. And when we think about it, a lot of programs today exist that work with students who are excellent, who are already leading change on the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's fantastic. These are important programs to scale up the work that young people are doing. But how do we engage students like Federico who have no experience or engagement with the SDGs? And how can we expect young people to take action if they don't even know what the SDGs are? And that's a serious issue that we wanted to solve. And that formed the basis of the thinking that we had for what we call the SDG Students program, which I want to share a bit more with you about. It's an upcoming flagship program that SES Youth has, and the notion of it is, how do we engage students like Federico on universities around the world? SDSN is currently based on 700 member institutions. These are universities, think tanks, and research centers, which means we're tapped into the leadership and faculty of all of these institutions. So how do we make the best of this network and really delve deeply and engage students who are based there? And the question that we want to ask is, how do we ensure that university students like, Tom is Federico's middle name, and how do university students like that go through what we call the three-step theory of change? How do they learn about what the SDGs are and have a fundamental, basic understanding of the SDGs as a framework? How do they engage with the SDGs and develop a passion for, if not all, then at least some of the goals that mean the most to them? And how do we make sure that they can act on the SDGs and have the pathways to be able to take action in the respective SDGs that they have a passion for? And that's a very key change that we want to make sure. Because on universities, students come together, they live together, they learn together, and then they enter the workforce, and they spend 3, 4, or 5 years together based on these campuses. And that's a very significant amount of time that we can use to make sure that sustainability is deeply embedded into the experience that they go through as students. And the core objectives of our program really focus on two main things: transforming universities and transforming communities. And they're centered around two questions. The first is, how do universities become hubs of learning and engagement for the SDGs, such that when a student comes on, they leave not just with a university degree, but an understanding of the SDGs, as well as an engagement with them. And the second question that we have is, how do universities and students become drivers of new solutions to local problems? We often talk about students as spectators in this long push to the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, but how do students become active participants? They know what the problems are on the ground in their local communities. So how do we make sure that students can drive the solutions and innovation to address these problems that they face and that they see in their communities? So the SDG Students program is all about creating what we call SDG Student Hubs on different universities around the world. And these hubs are led by what we call SDG coordinators, who are representatives of SDSN Youth, trained specifically to set up and manage these institutions. These hubs are what we call semi-physical, semi-virtual spaces. Semi-physical because it's all about regular offline engagements that we have for these hub members. How do we bring them together to learn about the goals and to take action in their local communities? And semi-virtual because these hubs are also on what we call Workplace by Facebook. SDSN Youth uses Workplace as an online platform for all its stakeholders, and this space is where Hub members can come together and engage with one another within the Hub, as well as with Hub members from around the world. So really, what we want to focus on is creating these spaces, these hubs, where students can come on in their campus without any engagement or experience with the SDGs at all, and say, I'm interested in the SDGs, and they come into this space, and they're part of this global network of young people who are learning about the SDGs and learning how to take action on their campuses. We know this works because it has happened before, and seated on my right is Buket. Buket is an SDG coordinator from Turkey, and over the last few years, she's worked very hard to set up an SDG club on her campus in Top University, and it's done some amazing work, really, to bring students in and engage them. So how do we take something like this and magnify it and make sure that it's on many campuses around the world? So the core activities of the Hub on both sides, on transforming universities, it's all about bringing the SDGs in to campus events, and at the end of the day, how do we make sure that there is what we call an SDG certification? Whether that's a compulsory course on universities that students can take to leave with a recognized form of sustainability literacy, or even just through an online tool provider like Suli Test, which is an online sustainability literacy test. So how do we make sure that all students leave campuses with a general understanding of what the SDGs are? And on the other hand, how do we let students drive solutions for local problems? And how can we, for example, make sure that the best ones that the hubs come up with are later developed further and taken into actionable plans? And that's something that we work very closely with the solutions team, which Dario, I think, will talk about later on in the next session about. And these are really what the hubs will focus on in coming months. One of the tools that we wanted to share that these hubs will be using is something that SDSN Youth has created, and it's actually a product of the Vatican Youth Symposium from last year. It's what we call the SDG Zone, and it can be accessed at sdgzone.com. It's a one-stop landing page for the Sustainable Development Goals that we've put together to help any young person or anybody at all with an interest in the SDGs, but no actual engagement with them, to really find out what they need to know and to engage with it deeply. And it very much follows the three-step theory of change as well. So we've compiled a list of 20 questions that young people might have, and this is the first half of it. So the first 5 is really all about learning about the SDGs and about linking to tools that can help people understand what the SDGs are. The second row is about engagement, and we work with various content providers, for example, Youth Opportunities, an online website that allows young people to find conferences and funding to really find ways to allow them to engage deeply with the SDGs. For example, the button there, where can I find SDG-related opportunities? We've worked with Youth Opportunities to make the SDGs a search criterion, so young people know where they can go to find SDG-related opportunities. The next 2 rows are on acting. So how can young people take action? For example, how can I volunteer for the SDGs? It all links directly to UN volunteers. And the final row is on sectors and how different people can get involved in cities, in businesses, and all of these different areas. And really, this one-stop landing page, we want to make sure that not just the public, but also the students on our universities can use this to really engage deeply with the SDGs. And that's something that we're very passionate about as well. And this tool is freely accessible, and any one of you can use it as well in your work. It's sdgzone.com. So to bring this all back to the SDG Students program, what do we want to see? Well, the mission is to transform the world's universities into hubs of learning and engagement for the SDGs, as well as drivers of new solutions to local problems. And the key to this is making sure that students know what the SDGs are and are able to take action in their own communities right now, rather than wait for the future or wait for other people to do it for them. And the vision in the long run is a global network of student hubs where students can come together to learn about, engage with, and take action on the SDGs. Now, over the last 6 months, my team and I have worked to train our current SDG coordinators, and we have about 80 SDG coordinators who will be running hubs in the next couple of months coming up around the world, in all regions of the world, and we're very excited to see this happen. But by the end of academic year 2020-2021, we want to make sure that we have 200 active SDG student hubs all around the world that are able to bring students together as part of this larger program. And seated around the room are about 17 network coordinators from SDSN Youth who oversee our regional and national network activities, and they'll be playing a key role in making sure that we can roll this out on campuses around the world. So I wanted to just end off by putting up these email addresses. So if any of you have any questions or thoughts on how we can take the program further, or you want to work with us, you can get in touch with me and my team. But really, the notion of this is there are 207 million young people on campuses every year, and that's a lot. I don't believe that even how hard we try, we'll be able to reach out and fully engage all 207 million. That's difficult, and for a new program, that's not going to happen, even 10 years down the road. But really, even if 10% of these students are engaged with the SDGs, we are creating a new generation of SDG implementers. They aren't all going to be sustainability experts. they are not all going to be working in sustainability-related fields. But when they graduate, they're going to be working in governments, in nonprofits, in the private sector, wherever they go, with a notion of what the Sustainable Development Goals are, and understanding why sustainability is so important. And in all that they do, in all that their organizations do, that becomes a key fundamental philosophy that they take with them. And that's really something that we want to see. So moving forward, how do we make sure that any student and any young person who might feel powerless, who might feel helpless, who might not know what the SDGs are, is given that opportunity to know what the SDGs are and given that pathway to take that into action in their local communities and to take that mindset with them when they go into the workforce. And with that, I'll leave you, and thank you very much for your time.